I, a 28-year-old woman, have been married to Rai, a 30-year-old man, for 4 years, and we've known each other for 8. He introduced me to his family after we had been together for 6 months, and while most of his family liked me, his mother, Ruth, who is 56 years old, has always been kind of weird around me. It's evident that she doesn't like me, and I've known that for quite some time. Typically, she would just ignore me and try to avoid talking to me whenever I visited. However, last week, I found myself home alone, and Ruth knew this because Rai was away on a business retreat. It was one of those social detox retreats where participants aren't allowed to have their phones or talk to anyone else unless it's an absolute emergency, so we all knew that we wouldn't be able to reach him for a few days. On the fourth day of his absence, Ruth dropped by my house, accompanied by 2 kids I had never seen before. They were both under 10 years old but didn't utter a single word to me throughout their stay. In fact, describing Ruth's visit as a drop-in would be inaccurate. She rang the bell multiple times before I finally opened the door, then stormed into the house with the 2 kids in tow, and left in an equally angry manner as she had arrived. I attempted to stop her to inquire about what she was doing, but she quickly drove off before I could get any answers. Left alone with the 2 unfamiliar children, they refused to acknowledge my presence, avoiding eye contact and remaining nonverbal. I tried unsuccessfully to communicate with them to find out who their parents were, but I eventually gave up. My initial instinct was to call Child Protective Services, but I hesitated due to a nagging feeling that these kids were somehow related to my husband's family. Though I couldn't quite place it, something about them seemed familiar to me. Instead of contacting Child Protective Services, I decided to call my husband urgently. I informed the receptionist at his resort about the situation, and within a few minutes, I was on the phone with him detailing everything that had occurred. He assured me that he would return home within a few hours and promptly ended the call. So, I found myself alone with the children until his arrival. The resort they had been staying in wasn't too far from the city, and it took him 4 hours to drive back home. Throughout those 4 hours, the children consciously avoided interacting with me, and I remained vigilant, not even taking a bathroom break, determined not to let them out of my sight. As soon as Rai returned home, I pulled him aside and explained the situation. I described how the children hadn't spoken to me at all and how they had been whispering among themselves the entire time, making sure not to let me overhear any of their conversation. This was undoubtedly a concerning situation that required immediate attention and resolution. There lingered an air of peculiar and secretive behavior emanating from the 2 kids, inducing a creeping sense of paranoia within me, teetering on the precipice of reaching out to Child Protective Services. However, Ray interceded, halting my impending action, informing me of his outreach to his mother for elucidation, assuring that any necessary steps could be taken following our confrontation with Ruff. Throughout my time at home, my attempts to establish contact with Ruff proved futile, each call met with resolute silence. Yet, when Wright dialed her number half an hour prior to his return, she swiftly responded, pledging to provide an explanation shortly. Approximately an hour later, Ruff made a subsequent appearance, accompanied by an unexpected entourage comprising Ray's entire family, my father-in-law, Ray's elder brother aged 32, and his spouse. The rationale behind her arrival with such a retinue eluded me entirely, and the expressions mirrored by the others mirrored my own perplexity. Nevertheless, Rai proceeded to confront his mother regarding the children, who, present in the room with us, exhibited palpable signs of trepidation and unease, endeavoring to shrink into the shadows, their discomfort seemingly exacerbated by Ruth's presence. When Ray queried his mother regarding the ownership of the children, she promptly claimed them as mine, with an unwavering demeanor, eliciting a bewildered "what?" from me. These children were unequivocally not mine. Rai and I had resolved to remain childless for the foreseeable future, contemplating adoption only if our sentiments were to change in later years. Such had always been the agreement. Ruth's accusation left me utterly flabbergasted, a sentiment shared by the remainder of the familial cohort. Despite Rai's entreaties for her to desist, deeming her claims preposterous, she obstinately adhered to her narrative, fabricating an entirely fictitious tale. According to her, 3 weeks prior, she had been contacted by an unknown individual who purported to be my former paramour, alleging that I had fathered 2 children with him during the tenure of our relationship. Allegedly, upon my marriage, I had callously severed ties, abandoning both him and our progeny before proceeding to expunge him from my life entirely. Subsequently, having located me after years of relentless pursuit, he had resorted to approaching my family, with Ruth as his chosen conduit. Supposedly, he had deposited the children at her abode, prompting her, in a fit of righteous indignation, to deliver them to mine, thereby unveiling my purported infidelity and duplicity. As she expounded upon her concocted narrative, I found myself rendered speechless, my gaping maw a testament to my incredulity, while she continued to expound upon her web of deceit. Upon the conclusion of her soliloquy, she imperatively instructed Ray that, in light of my newfound parental status, it was incumbent upon us to assume custody of the children, ensuring their well-being, as their father no longer harbored any desire for them. Rai steadfastly refused to entertain her falsehoods, adamantly urging her to depart with the children, cognizant of her mendacity. Regrettably, the remaining members of the family remained unpersuaded, seemingly inclined to accept Ruth's spurious allegations as gospel truth, insisting upon our assumption of responsibility for the children's welfare, unless, perchance, they were privy to Ruth's ulterior motives. And I couldn't believe our eyes as we watched the footage, feeling a mix of shock and anger at what we were witnessing. Ruth, their own grandmother, forcibly dragging them to our doorstep, and the distressing sight of one of the kids attempting to flee, only to be violently shaken by Ruth's hands. The desperation in their movements, the fear evident in their faces as they tried to resist her grasp, it was heart-wrenching to witness. And then, to add to the turmoil, Ruth's slap across the older child's cheek, the sound of it echoing through the footage, leaving us speechless at the cruelty displayed. In that moment, everything became clear: their terror, their reluctance to speak, their frantic attempts to avoid being taken away. It was no wonder they locked themselves in a room, fearing the arrival of authorities who they probably associated with further harm. Rai's suggestion about needing proof suddenly made perfect sense, and the security footage provided just that: a damning account of Ruth's actions, captured unknowingly by the cameras we'd installed for entirely different reasons. As we watched in disbelief, a surge of determination swept over us. We knew what needed to be done. With this evidence in hand, we had the means to protect these children, to ensure they wouldn't be subjected to any more mistreatment at the hands of Ruth. It was a turning point, a moment of clarity amidst the chaos and confusion of the past day. With resolve in our hearts, we made a plan. We would confront Ruth with the footage, demand answers, and take whatever steps necessary to ensure the safety and well-being of the children. It wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to see it through. As we closed the laptop, the weight of responsibility settling upon us, we knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. But armed with the truth, we were ready to face whatever lay ahead, for the sake of those innocent children who had been thrust into this tumultuous situation. So, Rai was just as taken aback as I was, and in that moment of realization, it hit us like a ton of bricks. The reason for the children's silence likely stemmed from Ruth's influence, instructing them to remain tight-lipped, effectively isolating them in their own fear-induced silence. It was a chilling revelation, indicating that something sinister was at play, and our first instinct was to involve the authorities, to call the cops or Child Protective Services. However, the haunting memory of the children's terrified expressions at the mere mention of these institutions held us back. Their fear was palpable, etched into their innocent faces, and it stayed our hand from taking immediate action. Instead, we reached out to a close friend, a member of law enforcement, seeking guidance. It was his suggestion that struck a chord with us, to share the security footage on our social media platforms. His reasoning was twofold. Firstly, it would serve as irrefutable evidence implicating Ruth in bringing the children to our doorstep, and secondly, it could potentially connect us with the children's true guardians, shedding light on their mysterious origins. After all, Ruth wasn't a kidnapper. Her actions hinted at a deeper, more complex story, one that involved the children's real parents, who seemed to be evading the law for reasons unknown. With a sense of grim determination, Rai and I made the decision to post the footage, albeit with little hope of immediate resolution. Yet, within hours, our social media feed was flooded with reactions from acquaintances and relatives. While some, like my brother-in-law, offered apologies and support. Others, notably Ray's father, remained staunchly aligned with Ruth, their loyalty unwavering in the face of damning evidence. Ruth's response was predictably defensive, threatening legal action if we didn't remove the incriminating footage, an empty threat to which we defiantly refused to yield. In the days that followed, amidst the deafening silence from the children's true guardians, a new storm brewed within my in-laws' household. Tensions escalated, culminating in a bitter confrontation between Ruth and her husband, leading to the shocking revelation of their impending divorce. My father-in-law's subsequent tirade, blaming us for the dissolution of his marriage, left us dumbfounded, caught in the crossfire of a family feud we never intended to ignite. As the dust settled, and the truth slowly began to unravel, Rai and I found ourselves thrust into a whirlwind of uncertainty. The children, though now under our care, remained enigmatic, divulging only fragments of their past amidst a sea of unanswered questions. Yet, amidst the chaos, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to unearth the secrets hidden within the shadows, to unravel the tangled web of deceit spun by those closest to us. And so, with bated breath, we awaited the next chapter in this unfolding saga, bracing ourselves for whatever revelations lay ahead. So, let's untangle this web of family drama and revelations. The children, as it turns out, are indeed Ruth's grandchildren, but not through the conventional channels we initially presumed. You see, Ruth had a tumultuous history, marked by a clandestine affair that rocked her marriage a couple of years into it. This affair led to her bearing a child, but upon discovering through a paternity test that the child wasn't her husband's but rather her affair partner's, Ruth made a fateful decision. She persuaded her husband to consent to giving the child up for adoption, citing her reluctance to shoulder the responsibility of raising another child alongside her two sons, particularly at her age, which was 28 at the time. Despite her husband's reservations, Ruth's persuasive tactics won out, and the child was relinquished for adoption when she was just 6 months old, without her husband being fully aware of the circumstances. Meanwhile, Ruth continued her relationship with her affair partner until his untimely demise from a stroke 2 years ago, all the while keeping in touch with their biological daughter, the same daughter who had these two children, aged 5 and 7, with her boyfriend. It becomes clear why the children bear a striking resemblance to Ruth and her daughter, sharing the same dark hair and eyes, a hereditary legacy passed down through generations. However, the family saga takes a darker turn when we delve into the struggles faced by Ruth's daughter. Battling drug addiction alongside her boyfriend, she found herself unable to provide a stable environment for her children, leaving them to grow up in a constant state of fear, conditioned by Ruth's threats and their parents' precarious lifestyle. Ruth's frequent visits would invariably bring with them the looming threat of Child Protective Services, instilling a deep-seated fear in her grandchildren, who associated the mention of Child Protective Services or the police with imminent separation from their parents. This fear was not unfounded, given Ruth's history of threats and manipulation, witnessed firsthand by Rai and myself during her recent visit. However, the breaking point came with Ruth's daughter's recent breakup, exacerbating her substance abuse issues to the point of incapacitation. Unable to care for herself, let alone her children, she found herself at rock bottom, prompting Ruth to take drastic action. With her daughter's well-being in mind, Ruth made the difficult decision to entrust her grandchildren to Rai and me, while she facilitated her daughter's entry into rehab. The revelation of this intricate family dynamic sparked a heated confrontation between Ruth and her husband, culminating in a tumultuous exchange of words. Ruth's confession of her past indiscretions and the subsequent fallout prompted her to take responsibility for her daughter's treatment despite her own financial constraints. And so, amidst the turmoil of fractured relationships and buried secrets, Ruth's actions shed light on the complexities of familial bonds and the lengths one is willing to go to protect their loved ones, even in the face of adversity. So, since Ruth's abrupt departure and the subsequent revelation of her whereabouts living with Rai's older brother, things have taken a rather tumultuous turn. It's been nearly 4 days since she sought refuge with them, her emotional state fragile and shattered. With her whereabouts shrouded in secrecy, her only stipulation to Rai's brother was to keep her location under wraps, a precaution to prevent her husband from discovering her whereabouts prematurely. In the midst of this upheaval, my father-in-law's anguish has been palpable, his misery evident as he grapples with the aftermath of Ruth's departure. Rai has been a constant presence by his side, offering solace and support during this trying time. Meanwhile, the children remain under my care, their gradual recovery hindered by their steadfast refusal to discuss their parents, a reluctance that now makes perfect sense given the tumultuous circumstances surrounding their guardianship. Despite the challenges, I've made the decision to continue caring for them until their mother completes her rehabilitation or until a more suitable arrangement can be made. Their well-being remains my priority, and I am determined to provide them with a stable and nurturing environment amidst the chaos of their family's upheaval. In a surprising turn of events, after 2 weeks of turmoil, my in-laws have reconciled, deciding to call off their divorce and give their marriage another chance. The catalyst for this unexpected change of heart came when my father-in-law, seeking closure, confronted Ruth at Rye's brother's residence. Their ensuing conversation, fraught with emotion and revelation, evidently convinced him to grant Ruth another opportunity to mend their fractured relationship. While I may not fully comprehend their decision, I respect their autonomy to navigate their own lives and relationships as they see fit. Rye and I have opted to refrain from interjecting ourselves into their affairs, recognizing that their choices are theirs alone to make. As for the children, Rye's brother has graciously offered to take them in, understanding the constraints of my impending return to full-time work as a teacher. While we will undoubtedly miss their presence, we trust in Rye's brother's ability to provide them with a loving and secure home environment. However, I've made it abundantly clear that precautions must be taken to ensure their safety, particularly in Ruth's presence, whose volatile temper and past actions have raised legitimate concerns. It's a delicate balance, navigating the complexities of familial ties and personal boundaries, but our foremost concern remains the well-being and happiness of those entrusted to our care. In our ongoing efforts to acclimate the children to their new living arrangement with Rye's brother and his wife, we've been gradually introducing them to their future caregivers, laying the groundwork for a smooth transition. Thus far, the process has been promising, with the children responding positively to their interactions with Rye's brother and his wife, fostering hope for continued stability and well-being even after they officially move in. As for the latest developments, it's been a week since the children began residing with my brother-in-law and his wife, and I'm pleased to report that they're settling in relatively well. Their enrollment in the nearby public school has brought about a noticeable improvement in their demeanor, with newfound happiness and a renewed sense of vitality evident in their daily interactions. My sister-in-law, previously a stay-at-home wife, seems equally content with their newfound familial dynamic, embracing her role with warmth and enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Rye and I have maintained a steadfast distance from Ruth, severing all contact following the tumultuous events surrounding her abrupt appearance and baseless accusations against me. While forgiveness may be within reach for the infidelity that marred her past, her calculated attempts to tarnish my reputation and disrupt my marriage are unforgivable. Rye's unwavering trust and support have been instrumental in weathering this storm, anchoring our marriage amidst the chaos wrought by Ruth's deceit. As for Rye's father, his sentiments are a mix of disappointment and resignation, grappling with the fallout of Ruth's infidelity and subsequent actions. While he harbors reservations about their decision to reconcile, he understands the complexities at play and respects their autonomy to chart their own course. In my view, confronting Ruth serves no purpose beyond reopening old wounds, and I'm steadfast in my resolve to extricate myself from her toxic influence entirely. Although my father-in-law has extended apologies for his initial skepticism and misplaced blame, I remain wary of his intentions. True change cannot be measured in mere words but must be evidenced through consistent actions, a principle I hold steadfastly in my interactions with Ruth and her enablers. For now, my focus remains on fostering a nurturing environment for the children and safeguarding the sanctity of my marriage, undeterred by the shadows of Ruth's deceit cast upon us. As time has marched forward, so too has the resolve within me remained steadfast. My stance regarding Ruth and her enablers remains resolute. I want no part in their twisted familial drama. Rye may choose to maintain contact with his father, but my decision to distance myself from the toxic environment that surrounds Ruth and her cohort stands firm. Holiday gatherings hosted by my in-laws hold no allure for me, not when the specter of Ruth's deceit continues to loom over our relationships like a dark cloud. Moving forward, it's been over 3 months since the tumultuous events unfolded, and there have been developments in the ongoing saga. Ruth's other daughter, released from rehab 2 weeks prior, finds herself in the peculiar circumstance of residing with Ruth and my father-in-law. The notion of my father-in-law cohabitating with the offspring of Ruth's extramarital liaison is a surreal concept, one that I personally find difficult to reconcile. Yet, if this arrangement works for them, then so be it. However, I harbor no illusions of extending my forgiveness or acceptance to Ruth or her progeny. My principles remain unwavering, grounded in the belief that actions speak louder than words. Despite Ruth's persistent attempts to re-establish contact with Rai, my husband's loyalty to our marriage remains steadfast. His unwavering commitment to our relationship is a testament to the strength of our bond, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. Moreover, Rai has confided in me regarding the potential adoption of the children by his brothers, a heartening prospect that promises stability and security for the children's future. While legal proceedings have yet to be initiated, the prospect of them assuming custody fills me with hope for a brighter tomorrow. In conclusion, the chapters of our lives continue to unfold, each page revealing new trials and tribulations. Yet, amidst the turmoil, there exists a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light illuminating the path forward. As we navigate the complexities of our relationships and confront the challenges that lie ahead, one thing remains certain: our unwavering commitment to each other and the steadfast resolve to overcome whatever obstacles may come our way. Stay tuned for further updates as our journey unfolds.